G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talks Up for Ukraine War Update for the 15th of August 2025. I'm your host, the author, David Applegate, author of the books The Boyhood of Cade, Pearl Games, Into the Ozmound, and The Erotic Tales from the Empire. Part 1 is available now. All my books are available on Amazon. All my links are in the link tree. Thank you to all those who support the channel, and if you'd like to support the channel, you can buy my books, buy my merch, or join my patrons. All my links are in the link trees. You can scan the QR code on the screen or wait till after the show. Now, key events. The only event that matters is the Russia-US meeting. All else is irrelevant. I'd like to remind you all that I am trying to bring you neutral news. I'm not no Ukrainian, and as you noticed, a lot of channels are so pro-Ukrainian they don't even hide it anymore. They're all funded by the British intelligence, of course. You notice they all got extraneous information which they don't seem to have any sources for, yet people believe them. And of course, Ukraine has committed a war crime, attacking on civilian shipping, right on the very moment that Putin set off for Alaska. Key events in the last 24 hours. More copium. Actually, this is a interesting little bit of footage. This could actually be a real photograph. But of course, it's just propaganda, folks, to make everybody think that Ukraine's training hard, that people are volunteering for the fight. Yeah, go volunteer or else, right? Of course, Ukrainian drones attacked Russian cities, and not a peep from the Western media. Ukrainian military says that it hit a refinery, causing huge fires. You know, they've destroyed, how many times have they allegedly destroyed Russia's refineries? This war by Ukraine is all about hurting Russia so that the oil speculators over at BlackRock can make all the profits, right? The Ukrainian troops have stabilized the front, according to Ukrainians. We're going to get to that lie soon. But Russia has shot down some drones, didn't shoot them all down. Russia has made advances up to 10 kilometers or 6 miles in some areas, particularly in the town of Dorfilia. Basically, the Russian offensive is working and Zelensky is panicking. Now, during this, of course, is the Alaska summit. Like I said, did I not say, as the war gets towards the end, you're going to see a land grab by the Russians. You're going to see Ukraine now trying to mount a counter-offensive somewhere. Trump says he believes, but I think pretty much there has to be a second meeting involving Helsinki, the cocaine of Ukraine. Oh, I know. I'm trying to be bipartisan. I'm trying to be apolitical as I can, but I just can't stand Zelensky. Not for politics, but for his lying and excessive drug use that leads to even further lying, and all the politics involved behind Zelensky is just unpalatable. All the lies, the ignoring his many fundamental flaws, including the fact he takes nothing seriously, the fact that he's a big fake, the man's on steroids, the man has no decorum, he's a beggar, a thief, and a liar, corrupt. And of course, all he cares about is getting more weapons to fight his war, while he collects $384,000 a year. Sure, that's not an incentive to... So, there's no incentive for him to end the war. Because his life isn't on the line, although I think he thinks his life isn't on the line. I think his life is. I think his life comes to an end as soon as this war comes to an end, or soon after. And people have asked me this yesterday on the stream. They asked, well, why isn't Zelensky dead? And as I said to many people many times, I think Putin sees Zelensky as the best thing ever because Zelensky's incompetent. It's like, why didn't they kill Hitler? Same reason. An incompetent buffoon who gets in the way of the army's successes. Voldemort is the best asset Russia has. An incompetent leader is far better than 100 spies in the cabinet. Because he'll sabotage Ukraine without even being told. He'll do it because that's his natural instinct to be a fuck-up. Now, I think Trump's right. I think Trump will lay down the law. I think he'll set some targets, make sure that the Americans' position is clear, while Putin will make his position clear and unambiguous. Voldemort, of course, wants to sabotage talks by saying that unless he's present, everything is meaningless. In other words, he's inflating that he is somehow the keystone, the important one, the holy anointed chosen one, when in fact, he's just Keir Starmer's poodle. So what does Putin want? Well, he wants his territory back. He wants the Ukrainians to be denazified, and of course he wants the end to the Ministry of Truth in Ukraine erasing the Soviet history and the victory over the Nazis. Now, US President meeting is set for 3:30. I believe we'll see a press conference 9 a.m. We'll see a presentation, I think. Then there'll be a meeting at 3:30 p.m. soon after Putin's playing touchdown. There'll be only brief statements. All of this, of course, will be later today. It's right now, I think this is the right time zone, Eastern time, nearly 7 a.m. Of course, Kiev has actually, in the last 24 hours, conducted a small prisoner swap with Russia. Drone hit a residential house in Kursk. There's been an attack in the port, an attack on shipping. This was a Russian ship, civilian, not a military ship. Ukraine claims it's a weapons transport. Yeah, but of course, Zelensky, anything to hurt the Russian economy because he's on the side of the speculators, the war profiteers, the people that used to get, what happened to the war profiteers in 46. Well, only one side's war profiteers, that is. So that always what happens. It's never rules for thee, but not for thee. Has been around for a long time, folks. Meanwhile, of course, Russia is continuing its fight. It hasn't given up the fight and hasn't accepted the fight is over yet. But there are areas where they are clearly stalled and only fighting to keep the Ukrainian troops bogged down. And I think Kupiansk is one of them. I think Putin's made it quite clear for months now that he has no interest in Kupiansk. Although originally I think they did. I think they changed their plans and their tactics. And I think that they found that pretty much that, particularly with the, shall we say, promises from President Trump, because I don't think they're really threats. Threats are something that you might do. Trump makes promises. So I think the siege of Kupiansk and Lyman were delayed because they wanted to basically draw troops in to weaken the defences while they conduct their offensives in the south, because it's more advantageous to fight in the south and destroy many Ukrainians there than fight shorter battles up here. You may say, why? Well, it's all got to do with Ukrainians' weather, rather weird weather at that. It's whether it's hot and dry for most of the year, hot and wet, then cold and wet, then just cold and colder as you get further north. It declines very quickly. So, but there are, of course, warmer days, but that's particularly in the south, and which, as you can see, everything north of Travis Yard, there's nothing really much to report other than more fighting. But as you can see, they've made some very little progress here. Continue fighting here. These are clearing operations for Ukrainians who refuse to leave their dugouts in this area that have been overrun, while Russia lays siege to this, a depot, which supplies the fighting down here, which, of course, when cut off, will pretty much ruin the lives of several thousand about 2,000 Ukrainians, I believe. Fighting here. Nothing to report here, however, but in other areas, Ukraine has lost, as you can see, up to 6 miles. Bang. They've finally admitted the Russians broken through. And what they've done is sideline the towns and, breaking the supply line between these towns to this front. Key supply and intelligence and communications hub. All this, of course, they'll be fighting. Of course, Ukrainians think they're heroes who are going to go to heaven, and all the other doped up propaganda to basically make men fight and die for the glory of old farts who are going to sit at home and retire and wonder who's going to wipe their nappies because they don't have any taxpayers to fund their health care. But of course, Ukraine thinks it's going to be the 51st state and live off American health care. What? Trump's cut them off? Ha ha! Yeah, he's actually cut them off. Why Zelensky's so pissed and adamant to hurt Trump and provoke Russia into a full-scale war so that Zelensky can watch Putin die, because, that's what children do. They don't care how much they hurt themselves as long as they see someone else hurting. Did I say children? I meant immature political animals, because even children know that beating on... even bullies eventually grow out of it because they realise that pain, they start to feel the pain themselves. And they start being socially isolated as they get older. All the glory they have in their high school days wears off very quickly as others mature. And they remain immature, as people say. Most liberals are stuck in high school. Observation, trying to be apolitical. There are many, many people out there who could see good points in liberalism, but that's the problem. It comes with so much baggage that it's toxic. But as you can see, in addition to the fighting, there's artillery. Not much artillery is actually reported, but there is also bombing campaigns. This was reported yesterday, but fighting is continuing. So Ukraine hasn't given up on trying to stop the Russian expansion here, or liberation, depending on your politics. But again, another town they don't seem very interested in. Of course, this is why several pro-Ukrainian channels say Ukraine's winning because they can hold the Russians back. The Russians outnumber us and we can hold them back. Yeah, well, it's like Germany was winning in 1944 because they were holding back the Russians. Yeah, we know how that ended up, right? It's like Japan, we're winning because we held the Madeira for a couple of weeks, Or was it a couple of months? I can't remember now. But once Iwo Jima fell, you were, 6 months away from the end? Or was it 3 months? So, only other thing is, only drone strike reported was Odessa, but I think there were others because they're talking about drones here or missiles being shot down here. But again, it's just propaganda to make it sound like that Ukraine is winning and that they can be Captain Sky Shield of Europe. It's Captain Zelensky. Zelensky wants to be the next NATO, wants to be the NATO security. He wants, what do you think he's pushing so hard for NATO? He wants a job in the NATO security because that's, of course, the highest pay. Well, that's just a coincidence. I'm a humble public servant on $384,000 a year. Please give me a $640,000 a year job for life because I'm Voldemort Zelensky. Most important human ever. I'm Captain Sky Shield, protecting Europe from the bad Russians. Because it's like the Elephant Rock, and if people don't know what the Elephant Rock is, I suggest you look it up. But in brief, it's basically a scam. P.T. Barnum says, I could sell people this rock, call it the Elephant Rock, and just turn around and say, well, do you see any elephants? And people would buy it. He was basically saying that there's a sucker born every minute. And yeah. Well, Barnum's legacy did eventually die. It took a long time for people to realise that... no, they didn't. They always find a new scam to fall for, don't they? Yeah. But in the last 24 hours, there's been lots of artillery, a huge explosion in Solovansk, as you can see. This was clearly a missile. They've hit something. And look at basically you could say condom cloud, right? It's the condom ring. It's boom. It's a micro explosion that high, look at the tower. That's a, what would you say? This is just standard tower. You look outside and see what, 3 stories high. And look at that cloud. That's 9 stories. That's bigger than a bomb. That's something. Ukraine just lost a lot of ammo right there. Now, I think a lot of you, since I've got a lot of new viewers, I should clarify that when Ukraine invaded Kursk, Russia promised to hunt down, capture, and put the perpetrators on trial. 234 Ukrainian militants were captured. They're not the only ones, but this is the 6th criminal case. Now, this is the War Crimes Committee. There's a War Crimes Committee. Investigators completed 6 criminal cases against individuals from Brazil, Argentina, Lithuania, Georgia, and other countries for participation in hostilities in Ukraine. A lot of people dismiss this as propaganda, that it was a phony trial. But Russia actually invited consular people. This was conducted all under Russian law, consular people there. The law was already on the books, okay? Putin just basically gave the order to form a committee of criminal investigators to bring cases against members of Ukrainian armed forces who waged war on civilians on Russian soil, which is actually a crime. And I think this one dates back to World War II and the probably, 3 million Nazis who were put to death by Stalin. Whether or not you agree or not is up to you. But I'm just bringing you the apolitical facts. Facts don't care about your feelings or politics. And it doesn't matter what you think of Putin. He doesn't care what you think of him. He cares what Trump thinks because Trump has power. Hundreds allegedly have been killed by Ukrainian troops. I say allegedly because there are only scant reports of, but he's not lying. There have been reports that Romania and Hungary and Poland have also brought this up, that Ukrainians trying to cross out of Ukraine have been murdered. They've basically, Ukrainian military has allegedly cleared residential buildings by tossing grenades at people, and this has been reported. This is not the first time. Ukrainian military conducted what they call preemptive strikes on the Belarusian border to smoke out infiltrators, they said, in which there's hundreds of civilians were killed in the early stages of the war after Putin withdrew. Hundreds of civilians were killed. You might remember a famous case where an alleged Russian, a woman, was sexually assaulted, was stripped naked in Kherson, strapped to a pole and sexually assaulted 6 weeks after allegedly the Russians withdrew because she allegedly supplied Russians with information. Her crime, she was stopped by Russian soldiers, asked what she was doing and where she was going, asked for her ID, but the Ukrainian secret police murdered her anyway after they SA'd her. Did the British do anything about it? They closed the case, as they did with many cases, as unsolvable. There was no way to know who took part. They even in some cases blamed the Russians. And in some cases they did say they were Russian agents. Doesn't matter, you put people on trial, you don't execute them and strap them to a pole and sexually assault them. But this is the problem. This is why I do not like most pro-Ukrainian channels, because most Ukrainian channels, of which most of them are pro-Ukrainian, most of them are Ukrainians in Poland or Germany or UK. A lot of them are government employees. You can find them. You can find their names. Any member of the Ukrainian media is a Ukrainian government employee and most likely working for the Ukrainian intelligence service. The Ukrainian government took over their media. Now, Europe, according to Sarah Wagner-Knecht, I apologize, Sarah. I actually I don't know your politics, because I don't think it's relevant, that if you say that we shouldn't escalate the Ukrainian conflict to a large-scale global war, or at least a large-scale European war, then yes, I think you're right that we should not torpedo efforts to resolve the situation in Ukraine. And basically believes that there should be genuine progress, that there should be a level of trust between Putin and Trump, allowing for both sides to fulfill their promises and commitments. And she criticised European politicians, without mentioning names, Zelensky, for continuously supplying weapons at taxpayers' expense, Keir Starmer. But she's not the only one. Merkel 2.0 also provided weapons. But, of course, he's talking about, or she's pointing out that these claim to have some sort of moral superiority. Last time I checked, there's nothing moral about war, right? The only moral war is the alleged defense of your nation. And that allegedly, Ukraine is allegedly fighting for its freedom. What, freedom to be fascist? Freedom to attack ethnic Russians? Freedom to alter its history? Freedom to murder its own citizens? Sounds like 1984. Freedom is war is peace, comrades. The party's always right. In President Trump's eyes, everyone is to blame for the Ukrainian conflict, and but whether or not you like it or not, the Russians reported it. Has Ukraine? No. Ukraine blames one person. Of course, it's never their fault. Now, this summit is today. The meeting allegedly is at 3:30 p.m. I think that's the touchdown, estimated touchdown time of the Aeroflot flight with President Vladimir Putin. And this is not new. The Telegraph actually has published several recent articles on the inability of Ukraine to raise an army, and Europeans have done at least one moral thing, and that is they've refused to hand over men of fighting age who have made it to the West. But they won't publish those who didn't. But at least the estimation now is 650,000. Now, this is those who fled the country since 2022. There are believed to be probably twice as many hiding in Ukraine who survived by paying off officials. And the military faces its worst manpower crisis. And as I said, there's actually an organisation called Deep State that monitors the war, but they have ties to the Ukrainian Defence Ministry, and even they admit it's catastrophic and that they have actually lost huge amounts. According to some, they lost 400,000. They've abandoned, no, literally 400,000 men have abandoned the front, that they're now visibly losing the war. I said this would happen, a catastrophic collapse of the Ukrainian front. But I said, as this happens, I don't think Putin will massively take advantage of the situation because he doesn't want to trigger a European war. So what he'll do is he'll fight his way through what's left of the Ukrainian army, but he won't send in a massive contingent. And in some areas where that is written off as... because don't forget, there is a chance that some of these men, let's say he didn't want Kupiansk, and he goes into Kupiansk, and let's say 15,000 fled Kupiansk and are sitting somewhere near camped. Let's look at the map. If you fled the war, if you're sitting in Kupiansk for months and you fled, you could probably be up here somewhere. You could be down here. Same in the Lyman area. It's probably a few thousand in here. And probably thousands up here. Probably hundreds, thousands along this line up here and through here. Probably all the way back here. There's probably at least 300,000 who aren't fighting. But let's say the Lyman front did collapse, right? And maybe this front has collapsed, or maybe this front's collapsed. It's not the entire front. So let's say it collapsed at Lyman, and Putin decides, well, I can go in tomorrow and pretty much wipe out almost everybody. Probably cut all this off. Tens of thousands may flood back in. Maybe even hundreds of thousands if they started climbing through here fast. It's about the perception. If Russia could continue its perception of liberators, whether you believe them or not, is up to you. I'm just saying, from my perspective, the information that I'm dealing with, and most people cannot argue against, and those who do argue merely try to insult me as saying I'm pro-Russian, but I am bringing you the information that Ukraine won't. So the meeting in Anchorage is very important. It's the first, I believe, of 3 talks. They were already talking about a second meeting with Zelensky, and I think the third will be the sit-down. I don't know if it'll be in Alaska, the second one. I don't know. The third one will be in Alaska. I think the third one will most likely be in a European capital involving the European leadership with NATO, and that will be pretty much, they'll call it the something conference, but it'll be like the Yatla conference where all the parties involved sat down and carved up the world again which will include China and Russia, and Zelensky will be told to be the good little schoolboy and sit in the corner and listen as Britain, Germany and France carve up Ukraine and create a DMZ, and it'll probably be 100 miles. It won't be that big, maybe, but won't be all of Ukraine. No, Ukraine won't be neutral. It'll most likely end up with a DMZ. Ukraine will be pretty much ununitable, unreconcilable, and broken for the next 100 to 200 years, just like Korea. Tara Reid, without Zelensky, peace of a chance. Yeah. People ask her opinion, and remember, she's not a nobody. She's a pretty intelligent person who used to be a political advisor, I believe. So she's knowledgeable and a former insider who knows a lot about stuff. I don't know her entire expertise in geopolitics, however. But those who are in the know totally believe that Zelensky is sidelined on purpose because he is doomed and desperate. He is not a man in control of his emotions. He's not a man in control of his desires. He is a spiteful, petty individual who pretty much sums up the greed and arrogance that has destroyed Ukraine since 1935. He and his backers simply cannot accept the loss, and pretty much like all commies, you may not think he's a commie, you may think he's a fascist, but fascism is merely a stage of the transition from socialism to communism. Of course, political ideologists don't want to admit that socialism is merely a transitory, and that fascism is part of that transitory process of turning by fascism. See, fascism is socialism with a capitalist tint. That is the early stages of socialism, where socialists and quote-unquote progressive capitalists form a government, a coalition, so to speak. Why? Because they're capitalists who sell out in order to keep their power, wealth and privilege while they burn their competition. The good old biting off your nose to spite your face scenario of politics. And eventually fascism will collapse into a more and more totalitarian state in which there are no capitalists left eventually. As each capitalist dies off, their power is transferred to the state. You're seeing this in China now. China was never communist; it was socialist, and is still in the transitory state. It still has capitalists, so it's gone from socialism to fascism, and soon will progress into communism as Xi Jinping eliminates more and more private enterprise, private ownership. You look around the average Western house. There is furnishing. There's more than one electronics. There is probably the average Westerner has 5.6 times the possessions of the average Chinese. So that gives you some idea how privileged or underprivileged, depending on your point of view. And of course, intelligence from multiple sources are talking about a planned provocation by Ukraine to sabotage the talks. That provocation, I believe, today has begun with the attack on civilian shipping in Russian ports. I believe, obviously, they were helped by British intelligence because Ukraine has no submarines and underwater boats can't travel overnight that far. No, they had help, and that's a sin that is going to stain the Ukraine and UK forever. The biggest sin, of course, was electing Labour, because they're Marxist. Okay, they're trying to transition UK into a socialist state right now, actively. All right, US Border Customs Protection have taken control of the Alaskan airport. This is, of course, taken from the last meeting, but there is, of course, like everything else, this is an AI photo put together. Yeah, Media Bank. This is from previous meeting. I don't know where it was. Okay, so US president will roll out the red carpet. We'll greet him on arrival. They will go to a bunker at Joint Amerforth Richardson, a base on the outskirts of Anchorage, ironically there because of the Soviet threat. And the leaders will discuss not just Ukraine, but several other issues of mutual interest, which, again on the map, this, okay, US control access through here. They control this, okay? There's the Russian waters, bang. Now, believe it or not, this is one of the most expensive and profitable fishing areas in the world. And soon could be one of the most travelled, because there's not only oil in Alaska and Siberia, there's oil in Greenland, and all the way up through here. There's oil discovered all the way up here. There's oil up here. I said Iceland? Greenland, yeah. So this entire belt, this entire northern belt is oily. Of course, it's the... I think it's a very, very obscure... it's called Hyperborea, the land above the north wind. In ancient Nordic mythology, there used to be an island in not the ice cap. There used to be an island, an inhabited island, by the way, a large inhabited island, and it sank. It disappeared beneath the waves, and was replaced by the ice cap. Gone, completely annihilated. And there's no evidence of this except for the fact that there's lots of coal and oil well below the surface and underwater. And there's ancient forests in Siberia that are frozen over. And now Ice Age experts say that, oh yeah, there was probably an island there, just like Greenland was an island that the ice is pretty much just sunk by the sheer weight and ground it to pulp. What's left. I actually put together a pretty good presentation once for a school project, but I don't have it anymore. But yeah, there's pretty much so same in Antarctica. It's pretty much, let's say, around 1,500 years of oil. There are some also... oil is not a fossil fuel. It's plant matter broken down by bacteria, baked in the Earth's crust. That's why we have methane gas rises. And basically, slowly and surely, some of the ancient oil fields are refilling. So let's take a moment to hope that President Trump has exactly the right buttons to push, the right incentives, and that Putin is in the right motivation, and that any plan Zelensky has sinks to the bottom of the sea, that he and his goons are finally done with this war, and that, he's Keir Starmer's mess now, and I think the people of Britain are one of the reasons why Zelensky doesn't want to end the war is because he doesn't want to go to Britain and find out that there's going to be a revolution there against Keir Starmer and find that he's about as welcome as burnt toast. Or the BBC coming to collect the TV tax. Click below in my profile or scan the QR code on the screen.